What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA playoffs, Monday, May 31st. These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made. Okay guys, NBA playoffs. We have a 2-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. I like Mike Conley from the Utah Jazz playing the Memphis Grizzlies, who have the 13th worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing point guards. Mike Conley has averaged 32.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 29 minutes per game with a 23% usage rate. But take a look at this. He scored 44, 45, and 50 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 35, 37, and 33 minutes. He's projected at 42 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.2 times value. He's 8,100 FanDuel salary, and he's 1,100 less on DraftKings. What are they doing at DraftKings over there? That's way too cheap. Probably my favorite play on the slate on DraftKings. Amazing price over there on DK. He's a lock for me on DK. So Vegas thinks there's going to be 225.5 points scored in this game. And you can see Mike Conley has just been on fire versus the Grizzlies, scoring 44, 45, 50, and 49 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Grizzlies. So I like Mike Conley, especially on DraftKings. He's a lock here versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Okay, another point guard that I like is Ben Simmons from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the Washington Wizards, who have the 4th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing point guards. Ben Simmons has averaged 36.9 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 20% usage rate. He scored 35, 52, and 51 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 30, 28, and 38 minutes. He's projected at 42 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's only 4.8 times value because he's 8,800 FanDuel salary, but he's 900 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. And he scored 35, 52, 51, and 45 fantasy points in the last 4 games versus the Wizards. Vegas thinks this is going to be a high scoring game, the highest scoring game on the slate. 230 points scored in this game, so it's a great game to stack. Although both of these games have high totals, so you can pick from both of these teams here. It's a great matchup. So I like Ben Simmons, especially on DraftKings, here versus the Washington Wizards. Okay, another point guard that I like is Marant from the Memphis Grizzlies playing the Utah Jazz, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing point guards. Morant has averaged 35.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 27% usage rate. He scored 38, 58, and 39 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 39, 43, and 35 minutes. So he's playing monster minutes. He's projected at 39.8 fantasy points here tonight. I think he can score 42 fantasy points or more and get you 5 times value or more. He's 8,200 FanDuel salary, and he's 200 more on DraftKings. So just real quick, I would play Morant on FanDuel at 8,200 versus Ben Simmons, which is 8,800. And I would play Ben Simmons on DraftKings, who is only 7,900 versus Morant, who's 8,400. So Ben Simmons on DraftKings and Ja Morant on FanDuel. So that's how I'd play it. But I like Ja Morant here versus the Utah Jazz.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and then we'll send you $100 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Now guys, just as a quick note, we just released a free DFS contest on Draft Dashboard for MLB and NBA for DraftKings and FanDuel. There's over $500 available in the prize pool, and this is a totally free contest you can enter as a Draft Dashboard member. So make sure to click the link in the description of this video, give Draft Dashboard a try, and you can start playing in our free DFS contest and compete to win some money. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I got a value play for you. I like Seth Curry from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the Washington Wizards, who have the 4th worst defense overall, and they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing shooting guards. Seth Curry has averaged 21 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 29 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 27, 14, and 27 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 27, 23, and 32 minutes. So he's projected at 22 fantasy points here tonight, and on FanDuel, that's 5.9 times value. He's only $3,700 FanDuel salary, and he's $600 more on DraftKings. So he's my favorite value play on the slate on FanDuel by a big margin here, guys. I think he's just a smash FanDuel play here tonight. And we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 230 points scored in this game. So I like Seth Curry here versus the Washington Wizards. Okay, now another shooting guard that I like, although I think this is more of a DraftKings play, I don't mind him on FanDuel either. I like Dillon Brooks from the Memphis Grizzlies playing the Utah Jazz, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing shooting guards. Dillon Brooks has averaged 27.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 30 minutes per game with a 26% usage rate, but he's come on strong towards the end of the season and into the playoffs, just playing phenomenal basketball. He scored 38, 29, and 53 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 33, 28, and 36 minutes. So he's projected at 36 fantasy points here tonight. Now, even on FanDuel, that's 5.1 times value. He's $7,100 FanDuel salary, and he's $700 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. So I like Dillon Brooks here versus the Utah Jazz. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. I like Kyle Anderson from the Memphis Grizzlies playing the Utah Jazz. Kyle Anderson has averaged 29.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 27 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. But take a look at his last 3 games. He scored 40, 33, and 40 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 32, 36, and 30 minutes. He's projected at 35 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's $6,900 FanDuel salary, and he's $700 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. So I like Kyle Anderson here versus the Utah Jazz. Okay, another value play for you. I like Danny Green from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the Washington Wizards, who have the 4th worst defense overall, and they give up the 6th most fantasy points to opposing small forwards. Danny Green has averaged 22 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 28 minutes per game with a 14% usage rate. He scored 26, 15, and 24 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 25, 21, and 31 minutes. He's projected at 23 fantasy points here tonight. That's just about 5 times value. He's $4,700 FanDuel salary, and he's $300 less on DraftKings. So I like Danny Green here versus the Washington Wizards. Okay, who do we have at the power forward position? I like Jaron Jackson Jr. from the Memphis Grizzlies playing the Utah Jazz, and Jaron Jackson Jr. has averaged 29.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 23 minutes per game with a 26% usage rate. He scored 29, 22, and 22 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 27, 31, and 23 minutes. Now he's projected at 29 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's $5,700 FanDuel salary, and he's $300 less on DraftKings. So I'd really only play Jaron Jackson Jr. if I just build a lineup and I need this mid-range salary play. I think you can plug him in here, but it is somewhat risky here. I mean, he's scoring between 22 and 29 fantasy points, so his projection is on the high end, but he does have 30 plus fantasy point upside. You just gotta hope he can play around 30 minutes, get a fantasy point per minute, get you those 30 fantasy points, and he'll hit value on both sites. So not my favorite play on the slate, but at $5,700 FanDuel and $300 less on DraftKings, he does have 30 plus fantasy point upside, so I like Jaron Jackson Jr. here versus the Utah Jazz.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, another power forward that I like is Tobias Harris from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the Washington Wizards, who have the 4th worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing power forwards. Tobias Harris has averaged 36.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 24% usage rate. He scored 41, 33, and 51 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 31, 23, and 37 minutes. He's projected at 38 fantasy points here tonight. Now, on FanDuel, that's only 4.8 times value, so I'm probably not going to play him on FanDuel. He's $7,900 FanDuel salary, but he's $600 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. So I like Tobias Harris here versus the Washington Wizards. Okay, guys, and I just spotted this DraftKings price. I don't know why I missed it, but I just added him to my player pool here. And on DraftKings, and maybe even on FanDuel, I would prefer him over Jaron Jackson Jr. Also, I haven't given you any picks from this team yet. The Washington Wizards, you got Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. Those guys eat up a lot of the usage and a lot of the fantasy points. So I like to play either one of those guys and then get into some value. So I like Daniel Gafford from the Washington Wizards playing the Philadelphia 76ers, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing power forwards. But Daniel Gafford, he scored 29, 25, and 25 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 22, 20, and 20 minutes. So he's not playing a ton of minutes, but he's been super productive. He's got he had an 18% usage rate in the last 2 games, and he's projected at 26 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's only 4.8 times value because he's $5,400 FanDuel salary, but he's $1,100 less on DraftKings. So that would be well over 5 times value on DraftKings. And we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 230 points scored in this game. So it's a good game to stack. And if you want to play either Westbrook or Bradley Beal as your stud from Washington, and then play Daniel Gafford on DraftKings, I think that's a good setup for a lineup here tonight. So I like Daniel Gafford here versus the Philadelphia 76ers. Okay, moving on to the center position. So I've given you a bunch of players from, well, pretty much all teams except for the Wizards. Now, I wouldn't play all the studs from this team, even though I think I've given you all of them. But I like Joel Embiid from the Philadelphia 76ers playing the Washington Wizards, who have the 4th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing centers. Joel Embiid has averaged 49.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 36% usage rate. And I did call this last game. He hadn't played well in the playoffs, and the last game that he played, I picked Joel Embiid, and I said he's likely to break out, and he did. He scored 59 fantasy points last game, 34 the game before that, 40 the game before that, playing 27, 26, and 29 minutes. So he's not playing a ton of minutes, but he doesn't need a lot of minutes to get over 50 fantasy points when he gets going. So he's projected at 50 fantasy points here tonight. On FanDuel, that's just about 5 times value. He's 10,200 FanDuel salary, and he's 700 less on DraftKings. Just love those DraftKings prices all around the board. Not all of them, but a lot of DraftKings players are significantly cheaper, like Mike Conley, Daniel Gafford. Got to take advantage of those low DraftKings prices. So I like Joel Embiid here versus the Washington Wizards. Okay, another center that I like, once again, I like his DraftKings price a lot more than the FanDuel price, but I like Rudy Gobert from the Utah Jazz playing the Memphis Grizzlies, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing centers. Rudy Gobert has averaged 40.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 17% usage rate. He scored 42, 52, and 35 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 35, 35, and 24 minutes. He's projected at 40 fantasy points here tonight. Now on FanDuel, that's only 4.7 times value. I think you need around 44 fantasy points to get you 5 times value on FanDuel, which he's totally capable of. He's 8,500 FanDuel salary, and he's 700 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. So I like Rudy Gobert here versus the Memphis Grizzlies.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video, or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.